Welcome back. The Executive Director of the St. Lucia Chamber of Commerce, Brian Louisi, says it is not too late for the government to engage in a process of dialogue and consultation on the COVID-19 Prevention and Control Act. The Chamber says it is without question the right thing to do. The contentious COVID-19 Prevention and Control Bill was passed in both the lower and upper house amid much controversy and moves and countermoves by those who support and oppose the bill. The Chamber of Commerce, the SLHDA, and the Bar Association are on record speaking out about the process of passing the bill. The Executive Director of the St. Lucia Chamber of Commerce, Brian Louisi, says for the Chamber, the fundamental principle of consultation is standard and was required in the case of this bill. However, he says it is not too late for government to create opportunity for dialogue and consultation.
Chambers of the view that in the past we have seen, even when legislation has been rushed through, that government has thought about it and given and created opportunities for dialogue. And we think that there's still room for dialogue and consultation and for information sharing and discussion on this important piece of legislation that seeks to do. We think it may very well in and of itself be a noble piece of legislation, but it could always benefit from explanations and discussions, even at this stage.
The government has argued that the bill contains many of the same statutory instruments from the state of emergency, but is a piece of legislation that gives the Prime Minister more limited powers as compared to the SOE. Louisi says even so, input allows for government to explain and demonstrate to the public the value, purpose, and intent of the law put in place to protect them.
That may very well be so. But what happens is that when there is no dialogue and consultation, there's an opportunity for suspicion to develop. And we think that you need to try to reassure people that the legislation that you're passing is going to achieve objectives, which is really essentially to see after the welfare of the people and country. And we think that we have not been able to go through the bill thoroughly, and I'm sure others will do so, yet we are quite aware from our experience that there's always an opportunity through dialogue and consultation to improve and enhance legislation and policy.
Members of the government have argued that expressed and written opposition to the bill by groups like the Bar Association and the SLHDA were written with little to no consultation from their membership. The Chamber of Commerce's executive director was questioned about what sections pose particular concern to his membership.
At this stage, I wouldn't say there's any sections that pose particular concern, but we strongly believe that through review and consultation, we may find ways of improving on the bill and improving on how we achieve the objectives which we seek to achieve.
The government remains steadfast in its defense that the bill is simply a consolidation of all best practices and protocols that so many sections of society gave input on, which caused St. Lucia to be successful in combating the COVID-19 pandemic to date. The president of the St. Lucia Medical and Dental Association is also speaking about the controversial COVID-19 Prevention and Control Act. Dr. Merle Clark says although she cannot deny that there was some consultation on the issue, it was not enough.
Many have accused the St. Lucia Medical and Dental Association of being too quiet with reference to the COVID-19 Prevention and Control Bill that caused a huge stir in the public domain. The president of the SLMDA, Dr. Merle Clark, says their support was lent to the Bar Association in requesting a deferment of the bill, as there were indeed ambiguities that rose questions within the medical fraternity. Dr. Clark says the specific issues that the members took umbrage to have been relayed.
The specific complaints that our members had, and we did meet yesterday, the complaints coming out of that discussion was, Section 10, which deals to testing and labs. That our interpretation of that was that that would be limited to a certain extent, which we thought was not wise. If this is something we're going to have to be dealing with for the foreseeable future, it should not be limited. That being said, we've spoken to independent attorneys who said that we are misinterpreting that section. And that, to a certain extent, is one of the reasons that we think perhaps the Bar Association should take the lead on this, because there is some ambiguity and we are not lawyers. We absolutely believe that the section dealing with imprisonment with possible hard labor is way too harsh. That these are things that should be dealt with in as much as we want to encourage the general public to adhere to the guidelines and wear your mask, and so all those policies which have allowed us to be where we are at today, a fairly safe country, even in a global context. We want to say categorically that we think those things perhaps should be dealt with sort of like traffic offenses, perhaps a fine, something to deter people, but jail 6 months and hard labor is a bit harsh.
She says another major concern that has been circulating in the public is the intention to use monitoring devices. She says she is not sure whether the issue may be with the sharing of information, but assures that this is a practice that is being done in the medical fraternity.
With the apps and the tracking, we were on those meetings and we certainly had no objection to it, because it is naive of us to believe that there aren't people who would not stay at home. And it has been happening, which is why at some point home quarantine for people without pre-existing conditions was taken off the table, or children. But we also have to take into account that the hotel model of quarantine for the next 2 years is simply not sustainable. So you have to find ways, if we're going to have this person in quarantine at home, what can we use to ensure that they stay there? And that's why we see that as important, because again, the overall picture is the protection of the general population of St. Lucia. So it may be a tad inconvenient to somebody, but we have to look at the broad picture. The data that is going to be collected from that is even less than what we generally share. It would be where the person is in terms of tracking and your vital signs, essentially what is currently being done at the quarantine facilities.
Dr. Clark says it would be disingenuous to say that the association was not consulted. However, there was need for a lot more, as the issue with the bill was its ambiguity. Reporting for Hot 7 News, I am Janice Gonzalez.
The St. Lucia Bureau of Standards officially opened World Standards Week with a media launch on Tuesday. The SLBS has launched an online platform that will help reduce its carbon footprint as well as encourage more online and virtual interaction.
World Standards Day was established to pay tribute to the many volunteers on technical committees who work with standards organizations around the world to develop standards. This year's theme, Protect the Planet with Standards, was introduced via a media launch on Tuesday. World Standards Day is celebrated on October 14th every year. The director of the St. Lucia Bureau of Standards, Vern Emanuel, gave an overview of the activities that will help commemorate the collaborative efforts of the thousands of experts worldwide who develop the voluntary technical agreements that are published as international standards.
Through this month, SLBS will have a series of activities entitled Standards in Focus. On the 12th, we will start off with our compliance department. On the 13th, there will be the address to the nation by the Honorable Minister of Commerce. Right. On the 14th, World Standards Day, we will have another activity via Zoom, which will be the launch of the Good Practice Movement. Another activity would be the Standards in Focus, this time focusing on certification on the 19th of October. On the 21st, we'll have a panel discussion on the environment headed by our Standards Development Department and the Environmental Technical Committee. And on the 26th, we'll see Metrology in Focus, where we will speak to metrology issues.
The SLBS is also launching an online IT tool that will improve the Bureau's online presence, provide information to the public in a central location, as well as help reduce the island's carbon footprint.
Typically in the past, we've really been doing a lot of in-person meetings, printing of documents, and this IT tool really takes us away from that and brings us to having an online presence where our committee members can directly access the information, the documents that we work through, and have it in a central location. The advantage when we talk about not just the TC members, the general public can now log on and provide their feedback on standards that are out for public comments directly. And persons can now purchase standards online. So you no longer have to come in physically to the bureau, but if you have the ability to pay anything, if you have the ability to shop online, you can definitely purchase the standards online and get them in your inbox. So if you want a printed copy, that can be done. As we think of World Standards Day this year, we are talking about protecting the planet. And we see this initiative definitely as one that promotes protection of the planet as we move away from printed media into a fully online media for access of the documents, which sometimes are over 100 pages, and definitely helping us to reduce our carbon footprint and contribute to protecting the environment.
Standards cover all aspects of energy savings, water and air quality. They lay down standardized protocols and methods of measurement. Reporting for Hot 7 News, I am Genevieve Gonzalez.
Stay with us. Sports and weather are coming up after the break.